Whoa, sometimes you see those highlight reels, the big games, the Super Bowls, the college glory, and you think you know the story. You think it's all about the gridiron, but then there's the silence. The moment the spotlight fades and real life, raw and brutal, steps in. These aren't just names from a stat sheet. They were champions, rising stars, guys with everything to lose and the whole world watching. And their stories didn't end with a final whistle. They ended in a flash of violence, a tragic mistake, a sudden, shocking moment that ripped them from the game, from their families, from everything. You're about to hear about those endings, the ones the leagues want to forget, but that the fans, the city, they never will. I've pulled together 8 of the most unsettling, most heartbreaking, and sometimes most controversial cases of NFL and NCAA stars whose lives were cut short by violence, often off the field and long before their time. Get ready, because these stories are gonna hit you hard, and you will not believe how some of these cases finally played out in the courts. First, Steve McNair was more than just a quarterback. He was the face of Tennessee football. Born in 1973 in Mount Olive, Mississippi, McNair rose from humble beginnings to become one of the NFL's toughest leaders. Drafted 3rd overall by the Houston Oilers in 1995, he carried the franchise into its new era as the Tennessee Titans. Known for his grit and determination, McNair led the Titans to Super Bowl 34, falling just 1 yard short of tying the game in one of the most dramatic finishes in NFL history. A 4-time Pro Bowler and the league's co-MVP in 2003, he left a lasting mark as one of the most respected quarterbacks of his generation. But on July 4th, 2009, tragedy struck. McNair was found dead inside a Nashville condominium alongside 20-year-old Sahel Jenny Kazemi, a woman he had been in a relationship with. McNair had been shot twice in the chest and twice in the head while he lay on the couch. Kazmi was found nearby with a single gunshot wound to the head and a 9mm pistol underneath her body. Investigators quickly pieced together the final days leading up to the murders. Kazmi had recently been charged with a DUI, faced financial struggles, and feared losing McNair's attention. Just 2 days before the shooting, she purchased the very gun later used in the crime. Police concluded that Kazmi shot McNair as he slept before turning the weapon on herself. Forensic evidence, including gunshot residue on her hand, supported the conclusion of a murder-suicide. Yet, not everyone accepted the official findings. Private investigators and some close to McNair raised questions about inconsistencies in the case, pointing to her unfamiliarity with firearms and highlighting suspicious circumstances surrounding how she obtained the gun. Still, in 2010, a grand jury declined to reopen the case, leaving the official ruling intact. McNair's death at just 36 years old stunned the NFL world. Thousands attended his funeral in Mississippi, where he was remembered not only for his achievements on the field, but for his leadership and generosity off it. His story remains one of the most shocking tragedies in professional football, a superstar whose life was cut short in a way that left behind unanswered questions and a legacy forever frozen in time.
Shot at him. With so many people up around the line of scrimmage trying to stop Eddie George, McNair throws it into second gear.
On the night of April 9th, 2016, New Orleans was shaken by the shocking death of former Saints star Will Smith. At just 34 years old, the man who once helped deliver the city a Super Bowl championship was gunned down in a road rage confrontation that left the football world stunned. Smith's rise began at Ohio State, where he became an All-American and led the Buckeyes to the 2002 National Championship. Drafted in the first round of the 2004 NFL Draft, he spent his entire career with the New Orleans Saints. Known as a dominant defensive end, Smith earned Pro Bowl honors in 2006 and played a central role in the Saints' historic Super Bowl 44 victory over the Colts in 2009. Beloved for his toughness on the field and his generosity off it, he was more than just an athlete. He was a leader in the New Orleans community, but that legacy was violently cut short. After a night out with his wife and friends, Smith's SUV was rear-ended by a Hummer driven by 28-year-old Cardell Hayes. The crash quickly escalated into a heated argument on a quiet street in New Orleans. Within moments, Hayes pulled out a handgun and fired 8 shots. 7 bullets struck Smith in the back, killing him at the scene. His wife, Rackwell, was also shot in the legs, but survived. Investigators later revealed Smith's blood alcohol content was nearly 3 times the legal limit, though no evidence showed he ever used the weapon found in his car. Hayes claimed self-defense, arguing Smith had threatened him, but prosecutors countered that the shooting was deliberate and unnecessary. In December 2016, a jury convicted Hayes of manslaughter and attempted manslaughter. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Years later, after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down non-unanimous jury verdicts, Hayes' conviction was vacated and he was released on bond. But in January 2024, following a full retrial, Hayes was once again found guilty of manslaughter. He was sentenced to 25 years in April 2024, later reduced to just over 22 years with credit for time served. Will Smith's murder remains one of the darkest chapters in NFL history. A champion, a Pro Bowler, and a man who gave back to the city he represented. His story is remembered not just for the way he died, but for the powerful legacy he left behind in New Orleans.
Breaks another and cuts it outside. Emmitt Smith. Touchdown. Holy cow, what a run.
3. Sean Taylor. He was born on April 1st, 1983 in Florida City, Florida. By the time of his tragic death on November 27, 2007 in Miami, he had become one of the NFL's brightest stars and most feared defenders. Taylor's football journey began at the University of Miami, where he was a standout safety, earning All-American honors and helping the Hurricanes win the 2001 national championship. In 2004, the Washington Redskins selected him 5th overall in the NFL draft. Nicknamed Me Halfman Half Beast, Taylor quickly became known for his devastating hits, elite instincts, and relentless style of play. He was a Pro Bowler twice and regarded as one of the league's most dominant young safeties. But on November 26, 2007, Taylor's life was violently cut short. While recovering from a knee injury at home, he was awoken by intruders. Protecting his fiancée and young daughter, Taylor confronted them. A single gunshot tore through his leg, severing his femoral artery. He was rushed to Jackson Memorial Hospital, but died the next morning at just 24 years old. Within days, 5 men were arrested: Venja K. Hunter, Eric Rivera Jr., Jason Scott Mitchell, Charles Wallow, and Timmy Lee Brown. Hunter accepted a plea deal for 29 years. Rivera, the gunman, was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 57 years. Mitchell, believed to be the ringleader, was given life in prison. Wallow received 30 years, and Brown, through a plea agreement, was sentenced to 18 years. Though his career was brief, Taylor's impact was everlasting. The Redskins preserved his locker, painted his number on helmets across the league, and inducted him into their Ring of Fame in 2008. In 2021, his jersey number 21 was officially retired, honoring a player whose passion, courage, and talent left a mark the game will never forget. Sean Taylor's story is one of brilliance and tragedy, of a star whose light was stolen too soon, but whose legacy still burns in the history of the NFL. 4. Joseph McKnight was born on April 16, 1988 in Kenner, Louisiana. A standout at John Curtis Christian High School, he became one of the most sought-after recruits in the country, overcoming the devastation of Hurricane Katrina to carry his team to championships. At USC, McKnight was hailed as the next Reggie Bush, electrifying crowds with his speed, versatility, and playmaking ability. In 2010, he was drafted in the 4th round by the New York Jets, where he etched his name into franchise history with a 107 YD kickoff return touchdown, still the longest in team history. Later, he played briefly for the Kansas City Chiefs before injuries slowed his NFL career, leading him north to the Canadian Football League, where he found new life with Saskatchewan. But on December 1st, 2016, tragedy struck. In Terrytown, Louisiana, a traffic dispute escalated with Ronald Gasser. From inside his vehicle, Gasser fired his handgun, striking McKnight, who collapsed in the street. The shooting stunned the sports world. Gasser remained at the scene, surrendered his weapon, and was questioned. Initially released without charges, public outrage forced a deeper probe. By February 2017, he was indicted for second-degree murder. A jury later returned a 10-2 verdict for manslaughter, and Gasser received a 30-year sentence in 2018. But that conviction unraveled when the U.S. Supreme Court struck down non-unanimous jury verdicts. With his case overturned, Gasser pleaded guilty to manslaughter in 2022 and was sentenced to 10 years he had largely already served. He walked free in 2023, leaving McKnight's family with little sense of closure. Joe McKnight's life was one of promise, perseverance, and brilliance on the field. Yet it ended not with the roar of the stadium, but with senseless violence on a suburban street. 5. Darren Williams was a rising NFL star whose life ended far too soon. Born in Fort Worth, Texas in 1982, he fought his way from Carter Riverside High School to Oklahoma State University, where his speed and skill at cornerback caught the eyes of scouts. In 2005, the Denver Broncos drafted him in the second round, and almost immediately, Williams became known for his aggressive play, recording interceptions, and showcasing the kind of raw talent that promised a long and successful career. But the promise of that future ended on New Year's Day, 2007. Hours after celebrating the turn of the year with teammates at a nightclub in Denver, tensions flared. An altercation broke out between members of Williams' group, including fellow Bronco Brandon Marshall and local gang members tied to the Crips. Though the fight was broken up, its consequences followed Williams into the early hours of the morning. Around 2:10 a.m., as he rode in the back of a white stretch Hummer limousine with teammates and friends, another vehicle pulled alongside near 11th Avenue and Spear Boulevard. A barrage of gunfire erupted. 15 shots were fired. One pierced the limousine and struck Williams in the neck. At just 24 years old, he died instantly in the arms of his teammate, Javon Walker. The investigation that followed pointed quickly toward gang retaliation. Witnesses testified that Willie D. Clark, a known Crips member, was the gunman. After a lengthy investigation and trial, Clark was convicted in 2010 of first-degree murder, along with attempted murder and assault charges for the others in the limousine. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus more than 1,000 additional years for related crimes. For the Broncos and the entire NFL community, Williams' death was a devastating loss. He was more than just a talented quarterback. He was a young man with ambition, energy, and a career only just beginning. His murder remains one of the most tragic reminders of how quickly violence off the field can cut short even the brightest of futures. 6. Blenda Glenn Gay was born on November 22, 1950 in Greenville, North Carolina. By the mid-1970s, he had carved out a place in the NFL as a hard-working offensive lineman. Drafted in the 1973 NFL Supplemental Draft by the Oakland Raiders, Gay was released during camp, but quickly found his way to the San Diego Chargers, appearing in 2 games in 1974. His real break came with the Philadelphia Eagles, where he played through the 1975 and 1976 seasons, suiting up in every regular season game. At just 26, his career was gaining momentum and he seemed destined for a long run in professional football. But on December 20th, 1976, tragedy struck inside his home in Camden, New Jersey. In the early hours of the morning, Gay was attacked while sleeping. His wife, Roxanne, used a knife to cut his throat, ending his life in a sudden and violent act. Reports from neighbors and investigators painted a chaotic scene, one that shocked the community and the Eagles organization. In the aftermath, Roxanne claimed she had acted in self-defense, alleging years of abuse at the hands of her husband. She pointed to repeated police calls and instances of violence. Yet, when the case reached court, a psychiatric panel found no evidence supporting those claims. Her own attorney eventually admitted there was little proof to back her allegations. The focus soon shifted to her mental state. Doctors determined that Roxanne was suffering from schizophrenia. Rather than face a traditional murder trial, she was declared legally insane, committed to Trenton Psychiatric Hospital, and all charges were dropped. She remained there until her release in 1980, for teammates, fans, and the NFL at large. The murder of Blenda Gay was a devastating reminder that even the brightest careers can be cut short, not on the field, but by tragedy at home. His death remains one of the most haunting and shocking stories in the league's history. 7. Ray Caldwell was born on March 28, 1979 in Tampa, Florida. A standout at Jefferson High School and later at the University of Florida, he became one of the Gators' most dangerous receivers, helping lead them to an SEC championship in 2000. His success earned him a spot in the 2002 NFL Draft, where the San Diego Chargers selected him in the second round. Caldwell spent 4 seasons in San Diego before joining the New England Patriots in 2006. That year, he became Tom Brady's top target, hauling in 61 passes for 760 yards and 4 touchdowns, and helping the Patriots reach the AFC Championship game. He later played briefly for the Washington Redskins before stepping away from the NFL in 2007, finishing with 152 receptions, nearly 1,100 yards, and 11 touchdowns. But life after football proved difficult. Caldwell faced several legal troubles, including a federal prison sentence on drug charges in 2014, and in early 2020 he pleaded guilty in a case involving healthcare fraud. Still, by June of that year, he was back home in Tampa, spending time with family and working towards stability. On the evening of June 6, 2020, as he prepared to take his girlfriend out, Caldwell returned inside his home to grab a jacket. At that moment, armed men ambushed him. He was shot in the leg and chest in what police later described as a targeted robbery. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but he died in the ambulance. He was 41 years old. Investigators quickly ruled the case a homicide, stressing it was no random act. His mother insisted her son had been set up, and the community gathered days later at a vigil to demand justice. In the months that followed, federal authorities linked the killing to organized robbery crews, and suspects were arrested. One man later admitted his role in the crime and received a lengthy sentence. 8. Dwayne Haskins Jr. was born on May 3, 1997 in Highland Park, New Jersey, and rose to prominence as one of the most talented quarterbacks of his generation. But on April 9, 2022, his life ended tragically near Fort Lauderdale, Florida, leaving behind unanswered questions and a legacy that was only beginning to form. At Ohio State, Haskins became a household name in 2018. In his one full season as a starter, he threw for over 4,800 yards and 50 touchdowns, shattering school and Big Ten records. His performance earned him the Rose Bowl MVP and made him a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. The Washington franchise drafted him 15th overall in the 2019 NFL Draft, where he started parts of 2 seasons before his release. In 2021, the Pittsburgh Steelers signed him, giving him another chance to develop into the player many believed he could become. But in the early hours of April 9, 2022, Haskins' story took a devastating turn. After his car reportedly ran out of gas along Interstate 595, he set out on foot to find fuel. His wife, Calabria, told a 911 dispatcher she lost contact with him shortly after. As dawn approached, Haskins was walking in the roadway when he was struck by a dump truck and fatally injured. Reports later indicated he may have also been clipped by another vehicle trying to avoid the collision. Toxicology tests revealed that his blood alcohol level was more than twice the legal limit in Florida, and traces of ketamine were also found in his system. Though the medical examiner ruled the death an accident, his family pursued a wrongful death lawsuit, alleging that Haskins had been targeted, drugged, and robbed before entering the highway. They also claimed negligence on the part of the truck driver, the vehicle's owners, the rental car company, and the state for unsafe road conditions. In 2023, his estate reached a partial settlement with the truck's driver and owners. By the end of 2024, his widow moved to dismissed the lawsuit entirely, announcing that significant settlements had been reached. Dwayne Haskins was just 24 years old. Known as Simba by those close to him, he was remembered for his leadership, his charisma, and his potential that was never fully realized. His tragic death remains one of the most haunting chapters in modern NFL history, a reminder of how quickly promise can turn to heartbreak. 9. Shane Clifton Curry was born on April 7, 1968 in Cincinnati, Ohio. A gifted defensive end, he made his mark at Georgia Tech before transferring to the University of Miami, where he became part of the Hurricanes' 1989 national championship team. His talent and relentless drive earned him a second-round selection by the Indianapolis Colts in the 1991 NFL Draft, and he played 9 games as a rookie, recording tackles and a sack. At just 24, his career was only beginning. But on the night of May 4th, 1992, everything changed. Curry was back in his hometown during the offseason when an argument erupted outside the Armada Inn Club in Cincinnati. The dispute was over a blocked car in the parking lot, something trivial, but it escalated quickly. Witnesses recalled heated words, and then a teenager stepped forward. 15-year-old Artis Anderson, the nephew of one of the men involved, drew a gun and fired a single shot into Curry's head. The young defensive end collapsed inside his Chevrolet Blazer. He was rushed to University Hospital but died within the hour. The football world was stunned. The Colts had viewed Curry as a cornerstone for their defense, and teammates described him as focused, disciplined, and destined for greatness. His death was a loss that extended beyond the field, cut short not by injury or accident, but by senseless violence. Anderson was quickly arrested after fleeing into nearby woods where an off-duty deputy apprehended him. Despite his age, prosecutors tried him as an adult. In October 1992, Anderson was convicted of murder and received 15 years to life plus 3 additional years for using a firearm. He would serve about 16 years before eventually being released, later working as a substance abuse counselor. Shane Curry's story remains one of the NFL's darkest tragedies. A player with national championship pedigree, professional promise, and a future unfolding before him. gone in a moment of reckless violence. His name endures as a reminder of both potential unrealized and the fragility of life beyond the game. 10. Fred Lane was born in Franklin, Tennessee in 1975. A standout running back at Lane College, he went undrafted in 1997, but earned a spot with the Carolina Panthers. Lane quickly became a fan favorite, rushing for over 800 yards and 6 touchdowns in his rookie season, including a dominant performance against the Oakland Raiders. By the end of 3 seasons, he had totaled more than 2,000 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns, cementing himself as a tough, determined runner. In June 2000, he was traded to the Indianapolis Colts and was preparing for the next chapter of his career. But just weeks later, tragedy struck on July 6, 2000 in Charlotte, North Carolina. Lane returned home. As he walked through the front door, his wife, Deidre Lane, shot him with a shotgun, once in the chest and then again in the back of the head as he fell. He was only 24 years old. The investigation revealed a volatile marriage marked by financial strain and violence. Prosecutors argued the shooting was premeditated, pointing to a life insurance policy taken out shortly before his death. Deidre Lane claimed self-defense, alleging abuse, but in 2003, she pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and received 8 years in prison. She later served additional time for unrelated bank fraud charges. Fred Lane's murder stunned the NFL. A promising career and a young life were cut short in an instant, leaving fans and teammates to mourn a player remembered for his grit, determination, and the potential he never had the chance to fulfill. 11. Brian Paw was a promising football star whose life ended in tragedy. Born on August 12, 1984 in Miami, Florida, Paw played as a defensive lineman for the University of Miami Hurricanes. On November 7, 2006, just after leaving football practice, he was gunned down outside his apartment complex in Kendall, Florida. He was only 22 years old. During his college career, Poda was known as a powerful force on the defensive line. Standing 6'4" and nearly 280 lb, he played in 41 games for Miami between 2003 and 2006, and was projected to be drafted into the NFL in 2007. Teammates described him as a leader, someone who looked out for younger players, and a player determined to succeed both on and off the field. But on that November night, after returning home from practice, Paw was ambushed in the parking lot. Witnesses reported hearing a pop and seeing a man jogging away from the scene. Paw was shot in the head with a medium caliber weapon collapsing near his car. His murder devastated the Miami football program and left investigators searching for answers. For years, the case went unsolved. Rumors spread, but no charges came. Then, in August 2021, police arrested former Miami teammate Rashawn Jones and charged him with first-degree murder. Prosecutors alleged that Jones, who had been suspended from the team years earlier, harbored resentment toward PA. Evidence cited included past threats, phone records, a witness photo lineup, and ballistics. In March 2022, a Miami judge granted Jones bond set at $850,000, though prosecutors insisted there was a viable case against him. As of today, the legal proceedings remain ongoing, with Jones maintaining his innocence. Brian P.A.'s story remains one of the darkest tragedies in college football history. A young man on the cusp of the NFL, taken by violence, not on the field, but in life itself. If I missed any player in the video, please name them in the comments. If you enjoyed this, I'll be posting a lot more interesting videos on the channel. I'd greatly appreciate it if you could like and subscribe.